this week or next week? Oh,
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Trending in Hollywood. I, of course, am Scott Menzel, happily joined, as always, by Demetri Panos.
Tonight, evil dies tonight.
So I don't know if that went live before you heard, but we are talking about Dune today as well as Evil Dies Tonight, aka Halloween Kills, which Evil Dies Tonight should have been the name of the movie. Halloween, Evil Dies Tonight.
Yeah, or make Haddonfield great again.
All right,
Make
so let's start.
Great.
All right, so let's. I feel like we need to circle back to the Dave Chappelle thing since it's still kind of had like a lot of like.
Still, it's like every day.
Yeah. So Demetri, you want to fill us in on how much stuff has been going on with this? I mean, it's like hiring and firing and bringing back, and a lot of stuff going on.
I never read about firing. People were suspended. And people
sorry, that's right. Sorry, suspended.
Yeah, people were suspended for entering an executive meeting that they weren't quote unquote invited to. So they were suspended, but that lasted about 24 hours. It was investigated. It was actually investigated, and apparently it was okay that they showed up, I guess. So, and then Ted Sarandis came out in support of Chappelle and the show. He got backlash, and then he doubled down, but he came out with a statement that says, look, we pride ourselves on the shows that we have because they reach out to many different people. We especially pride ourselves on comedy, and he listed some names. And then this morning, one of the comedians he listed, who's in Australia, came out and slammed Ted Sarandis for including that person's name, like giving promotion to that person and their Netflix comedy specials. Like the whole thing is, to me, at great risk here. The whole thing to me is kind of like crazy. Like what's going on here? I had a conversation. So wait, Scott, I guess we should probably fill people in as to what the hell we're talking about.
Oh, okay. So just this special right here, Dave Chappelle, The Closer, is now streaming on Netflix and is probably getting so many views, probably more than they ever expected it to because of all this conversation, because it's been making headlines for about a week and a half. And essentially what happened was last week, a whole bunch of people got up in arms because Dave Chappelle in this special made a joke that people have felt was very insensitive about the trans community. And he was also talking about Black lives and how they're treated, and then also how the gay community is kind of put on a pedestal, and the Black community, like no one really cares about them still. So there's a whole bunch of layers. I still didn't have a chance to watch this, but I've been reading more and more about it. People forget what comedy is. People also forget that the best type of comedy is also one that is risky. But basically, long and short of it, like Hollywood, as usual, is up in arms, and people are complaining, cancel him. We don't want him anymore. Netflix should take this show off, this special off, and never work with him again. And dear white people, creators, like, how dare you? And I'm never going to work with Netflix. And a bunch of people got suspended, then they got reinstated. So it's just a huge mess. And it's just been ongoing. And I have to agree. I love the fact that they're not backing down with it. And I want to just say this as someone who is such a supporter of inclusion within the industry, is that you can't downplay this. Like you can't if you either way you lose. Let's just put it that way. So if you take this stance against Dave Chappelle, it makes a huge statement about 13% of the freaking population, which is black people, as opposed to the trans community, which I'm sorry to say this right now, barely makes up 0.06% of the United States population. So I understand that there's some upset personalities here, and I don't know what it means. I don't know what it feels like to be a trans person, so I'm not going to try to downplay this, but I do have to kind of like see it from a broader picture, and that is, you're always going to get upset about something. People are always going to say something that's going to offend someone, and we have to learn to kind of move past that. So if you're in the trans community and you don't support Dave Chappelle, that's completely fine. But he should be able to have his opinion and be able to make his jokes. And that's how I feel about that.
And that's a great thought. I echo everything you said. I mean, I think comedy, unless that person truly is a racist and we know that the person is a bad person outside of the comedy routine. But for Dave Chappelle, to me anyways, what the hell just popped up? Did we get hacked? Wow. Okay. Webcam here, girls. We'll do what you say.
Timeout. There we go. I got it.
There we go. Thank you. Wow, that was weird. Hi, Zach and Yash. Thanks for joining.
And webcam HD here, girls. Will do what you say. There you go.
All right.
Yippee. Maybe Netflix should hire them.
Yes. But Scott, I want to go back because to something that you said. You had mentioned that you had not watched the special.
Yes.
Full transparency, neither have I. But here's the deal, and it's proven. I'm willing to bet that a lot of the people have not watched the special who are complaining. Case in point, earlier this week on CNN, Don Lemon show on CNN. He's a highly regarded. He had a trans person on to talk about this, and the person starts off the interview by saying, and this person was on there feigning anger. And the first word out of this person's mouth was, well, to my understanding, to your understanding, did you even watch the show? Or are you getting this from somebody else who is really pissed off? And you're like, you're not even getting this all in context. Now, I was talking with my neighbors about this yesterday with someone who, in fact, did watch the show. And I was like, look, fill me in, please. Was Dave Chappelle, was he out of line? And he's like, no. He goes, if you saw the special and watched and caught the context of what we were saying, and by the way, as Yash did have, he puts it in somewhat context. My neighbor put it in a little more succinctly as well. He's like, no, he doesn't hate he's like, he's not saying that at all. He's just making a point about black, gay, LGBTQ. They speak the loudest. He goes, man, if we had the same thing, I would love to have that too right now. So this whole thing just seems to be taken out of context. Listen, comedians throughout history have been canceled or wanting to be canceled. Think about comedians like when I was growing up, Sam Kinison, Eddie Murphy, Andrew Dice Clay, even Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers. They wouldn't exist today. They couldn't, although I will say that somebody like a Sam Kinison and a Joan Rivers would punch back, big time. like big time punch back. And that's what Chappelle seems to be doing. He's like punching down, saying, hey, you just got to listen. I think this whole, I think it's a problem. I think it's a systemic problem today that people don't listen. They pick and choose, or somebody else complains to them about something, and without watching it, they're going to complain. So when you go onto a Don Lemon and say, well, to my understanding, you have no right to be on Don Lemon's show. And in a sense, I have to say to Mr. Lemon, who I do respect as a journalist, like, how did you not vet this person? Like, it's obvious they didn't watch the show. And then I'd have to say, Mr. Lemon, did you watch the show? Like, as a black person, like, did you watch it? So look, comedy isn't pretty. So yeah, even George Carlin. Could you imagine George Carlin today?
No, I cannot actually.
Could you? But again, another guy that would punch back. So, throughout history, comedians, stand-up comedy, they'll take a stance. And again, there have been some comedians that, yeah, they come out as racist. They go bye-bye. But I would never look at George Carlin. I would never look at Joan Rivers or Sam Kinison. I know they're not with us today, but I would never look at those people and say, oh my God, they're racist. If anything, I think they loved the LGBTQ community before it was even a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And I also want to add to that point that I feel like a lot of people within the industry are really struggling how to handle this, right? Because there's this, like I said at the top, it's sort of like you have the black community and you have the LGBTQ community, and both are very, very vocal. And the last couple of years have not been kind to either one. No. And I think that talent within the industry, who, like the big names who we normally would probably see come out, like a Regina King or something like that, Tessa Thompson, like there's people who I feel like they're kind of at that crossroad right now. They don't know what to do because they're sort of like, I get that, and I get that, and I understand both.
And I'm going to shut up
because they don't want to piss off either side. And I think we've learned throughout 2020 the best thing a celebrity can do when they don't know it, when they shouldn't say something, it shouldn't say anything. Because when they tried to talk about the world when we were all suffering, they just came off as disingenuous. And in this case, I think it's very clear that they would be like picking sides based on personal relationships with one or the other.
Right. Scott, you're inspiring me. I think I just want to just pile into a version of Imagine right now. I agree. Listen, my feelings about Netflix. It's a love-hate relationship. But in this case, I do back Sarandos, and that doesn't make me that I hate LGBTQ. Listen, I'm part of an association that champions diversity. It's called the Hollywood Critics Association. Scott, you know a little bit something about that. So, but I think that we, especially when it comes to comedy. Yeah, I get it. May not be your brand of comedy.
But here's the thing. But here's the truth, though. Like, people coming for Netflix, when Netflix has been one of the only streaming services that has embraced every single community, like, without showmanship, right? Like, there's no, like, Disney Marvel-fied, like, look at us, we made an Asian superhero movie. Like, they literally make Latino-themed shows, Asian-themed shows, shows that deal with different cultures in different languages.
Weekly,
mind you. Weekly.
Yeah.
And so, like, to kind of say, and it's just like, when we talk about this, like, saturation of content,
Oh boy, they're back.
there's so much stuff there, and Netflix literally paves the way for this type of content. So,
They
like,
did.
to try to, like, censor something makes no sense.
And to come and to attack to attack the president, who's like, as you just like wonderfully explained about Netflix, there is like their programming is diverse as you can find for a streaming company like that. You just
Even their
it
awards
should be
team, I mean,
commended.
their
Yeah.
awards team is literally Albert's Latino, who's over there.
Uh-huh.
Nicole's Asian. There's a whole bunch of black women on the team. I apologize that I don't remember. I'm trying to remember everyone's name, but it's literally, even their organizational structure is wildly diverse.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, what's going on? I really don't understand.
No, I don't understand either. And instead of like taking a step back, like again, just take a step back. If you don't like Dave Chappelle's brand of humor, let me. Oh my God! So the conversation I had with our neighbors, this fits right into what we're saying. So it was me and two other gentlemen. I use that term loosely, and both of them are black. And I was somebody said, oh no, it was me who brought up, oh, I wanted to talk to you guys. Has anybody watched the Dave Chappelle show? One of the people said, yeah, I watched it, found it hilarious. The other guy said, he's not my thing. He's not my cup of tea. I didn't watch it. He goes, I don't like him. And that's the way it should be. Like, that's the way it should be. If you, I don't like Dave Chappelle. That's it. It's that easy. Nobody's forcing you to watch him. But if you're going to complain about something, at least watch it in the context for what he's saying. We are also in the culture, Scott, of those who speak the loudest. We pay attention to more. Like it's almost like they scare us societally, and we have to bow down, even though they can be in the minority. I mean, I'm not just saying LGBTQ. I'm just look at what's happening in our social political system. Like look at the anti-vaxxers. Look at the anti-mask people. Those people are yelling so loud you would think that they're in the minority. I mean the majority. When in fact that's not the case. So I don't know how we got to this place today. But we need to get over it and get over it fast, because bad things are going to be happening and more people are going to get hurt.
I think that's a perfect segue into the strike, don't you?
I think so. Internet mobs. And Zach, we are a family show. Actually, I think that this is a good debate. I think this is a good topic for families to talk, because I don't believe somebody like Dave Chappelle is against equality or diversity. I mean, he's a black comedian, for crying out loud, making his bones like, so yeah, I think we have to take a step back, take a breath, and strike. And we ain't talking bowling.
So,
whoops, what happened, Scott? Oh, well, Scott went bye-bye. He either lost his internet. Oh, here he comes. It must be those damn bots. What did you do, Scott? What did you do?
Oh my God. I don't know.
Oh my God.
Live
I was like,
in person.
He was taken up by the LGBTQ.
Yeah, they were like the Alliance of Theatrical Stage did not want me to speak about the strike. But this is something that I don't think people realize the impact of. That on Sunday night at midnight, aka Monday morning, it becomes everything shuts down for pretty much. I don't think people realize that. So the people, when you see your trailers, You're not going to get any emails about trailers. There's not going to be press releases going out. This is a huge, huge thing. I think people are just
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, it's the people within the industry who's working behind the scenes. Like, no, it's
Yes,
this.
Scott, that's a great point because yesterday you and I were at a screening
Yeah.
and you had introduced me to this very nice publicist. And that person, she said, "Oh yeah, Monday I could be out of work." And I was like, "Why?" She goes, "Well, part of the union." I said, "That affects you too?"
Yeah.
Because I believe that it was only, production people, but it goes way beyond that. Um, so it is going to be a nationwide shutdown as far as the entertainment industry goes, but it's far wider than just production people. Like you said, publicity people, all these people have to be in sync and in line to the union. So interesting times indeed. This morning I was reading about it, and IATSE seems to they're remaining optimistic. They say that they're trying to make some head ground, but they're still preparing everybody for a strike. Um, Other things that I've read is if in fact they do happen to go on strike, they feel that it will be resolved in a relatively timely manner. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what happens. So, um, yeah, it's we're living in like really crazy times. I get what they are going after, and again, I think that the reason why we think it's just production people because it is something that is a production kind of thing. It's the kind of days that they work. Um, and the hours that they work and how they get treated and things like that. So, being a person who's worked in production, I just thought that was the norm. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, I was when I worked on Contact, I ate, breathed, slept. Like that's what I did for pre-production, production, post-production, and that's all I did. And yeah, there would be some long days. I just thought that's the way it worked out, but it shouldn't be that way, and people should be treated better. So yeah, it's if this happens, it's gonna affect a lot more people than I initially thought it was going to.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think, and it always kind of comes down to the things that we discuss about the industry in general, right? Is
Mhm.
that there's a demand for higher wages and things of that nature. And it's mainly, I think, yes, we should talk about this, right? It's
Sure.
mainly because of streaming productions.
Yes.
And I think the industry being in flux so much is really, this is a big turning point. I don't think people realize how big of a turning point this is, because a lot of streaming, the reason why things went to streaming was because it was more cost efficient, right?
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot on this show. Like the productions are not as expensive. Sure, for like every crown you have, something like a Floor is Lava or like a Mass Singer or whatever, like something that costs like very
$2. Yep.
little money.
Sure.
But now with all these people demanding higher wages and compensation and like less hours, you're not going to have that cheap price point. And I wonder how they're going to have to agree to all this stuff. They're going to have to meet a middle ground. But the problem ultimately then becomes is, how does that impact the number of these productions? Because as
Yeah.
those costs rise, you're going to have to do something to offset that.
Yeah.
So there
And they're
might be
saying,
more cancellations
well,
than you expect.
and they're saying that it's mostly the streaming companies right now that
Yeah.
are in flux, but a lot of the studios as well, because they have a lot of streaming things in production, going in production. But again, I'm just going back, the movie industry and even the listen, Star Trek, something I know a little bit about. If ever you have watched any of the behind the scenes of either The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, all of them say they were grueling shoots, grueling. They would be working 12, 13, 14 hours a day on the soundstage, setting up shots, doing this, rehearsal, whatever. I heard that from many of the cast, especially in behind the scenes or whether they're doing interviews. It took them away from their families. Um, and in some cases, hurt that family dynamic. Uh, that's the way I just always thought that it was. And I think that's part of the fight, is to no longer have these 12, 13, 14-hour days where you're in your uniform or costume or whatever, and you have to stay on set and have to wait for somebody to set up a shot. And then you have to do things over. And if it's a special effects show, or even an NCIS show, I think I think that's in part what it's about. I agree with you 100%. I think we're going to be at a flashpoint come this Monday, if they do in fact go on strike, and I think it is going to be a sweeping change around the industry that's going to affect every part of the industry, every facet, from movies to television to streaming shows, everything across the board.
It's a big deal, and I feel like a lot of people are not giving it enough conversation. I feel like there's articles coming out about like the strikes continuing and whatnot, but there wasn't a lot of people explaining what this ultimately means. Right. It's just kind of like, this is happening. It's like, what's happening? Like, what does this mean? Like, there's not enough information out there. So that's why I wanted to talk about it on this show. And I'm sure we didn't provide all the information. I'm sure if you dig deep enough out there, there's probably a good article or two that really goes into it.
Can I ask you, before we met at that screening and you talked to that publicist, did you realize that it affected them as well?
No, I had no clue. In fact, after we were done lunch, I actually called Ashley and I was like, did you know this was happening? And she goes, I didn't know it impacted them either. So like, I don't think anyone kind of connected the dots. I think like you said, you just think of kind of like the below the line people and that's it. But
absolutely,
I think that's what the whole strike is too, right? Is that they're all standing together.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people, I mean, I would love to, it'd be great if like some of these actors, if there's more people like Keanu Reeves, right? I don't know if you read about Keanu Reeves, but like, like he gave, like when he was working on The Matrix, he gave some of his money to the below the line people. He spread it out. And I think that's great. I mean, a lot of actors make a lot of money. Especially if you're top tier talent. I mean, give back to all those people that make you look good.
Absolutely.
It's a good look.
I think so. I think so. And the other thing that I think people aren't focusing in, like right now it's domestic, but this is a global kind of thing, because they have IATSE in England, and England is in support of this as well. So this has global reach. I think that it's going to affect everybody in that industry. So
yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
All right, going over to the two reviews for this week. I guess we'll start with Evil Dies Tonight, since it's out this week, and because I also feel like we're going to talk about Dune a lot more in detail than Halloween Kills. So Halloween Kills, the second chapter in what seems like to me a never-ending franchise. I was me and Demetri talked about this over the last couple of weeks. I was a huge fan of 2018 Halloween. I went into this optimistic, even though the early reviews for it were kind of mixed at best. Long story short, I was not a fan of this movie. I think if you want just a slasher movie, if you want a lot of killing, it's perfect. if you want something more along the lines of 2018, where there's a little bit more story and depth and things going on besides mobs screaming evil dies tonight and chasing after people and people showing up dead with a pumpkin over their head, then you don't really got much here other than that. I mean, this is little. I mean, you cannot. Do you know how many people died in this movie? Because I feel like it's got to be like 50 plus, right, Demetri?
Well, there were 11. Okay. There were 11
Demetri
first
counted.
responders. So 11 first responders. Then we had at a park, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 16, 18, 20. That's a couple. 21, if you want to count that person. 22, 23. No, I'm being serious. I'm counting what I
You
remember.
really are counting. Okay.
23.
I can let you continue counting as I just go.
I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop at 20. I believe 24 seems to be that number. It's probably the highest body count that Halloween has had since the original Halloween 2 back in 1981, which was somewhere in the low teens. So, but I believe if my memory is correct, and I was trying to do it from beginning to end of movie, yeah, I'm gonna say it was 20. I was gonna say it was 24. 24. Yeah.
Okay.
Give or take.
All right. So real quick, I'll jump into like what my issues are with this and what I like. Okay. So the first movie obviously dealt very heavily on, Jamie Lee Curtis and building up that dynamic and the daughter, like it's like this girl power type movie. And I feel like the script was like really sharp and the jokes were like very clever and well written. And in this movie, I felt like everything was just lazy. I just felt like the dialogue was like cringeworthy. The acting was so all over the place. I even feel like Judy Greer, who was like such a standout, like was like phoning it in this time around. Like she just seemed less into it. The daughter wasn't as interesting this time around. I couldn't believe it. But to me, and I don't want to give it away, and I know I shouldn't care because this is the kind of stuff that draws up views, but that ending is just like the dumbest thing. I mean, there's like a twist in this movie, and I'm kind of like, which like, again, it's hard to talk about without spoiling it. Like,
right,
he's done, we got him, and then all of a sudden, oh, I know that he's that, and like, it's like, I don't know, it's so stupid. It's so stupid.
And this is where you and I agree to disagree. I'm actually wearing my Halloween Kills shirt. It has that mantra at the
Evil
bottom.
dies tonight.
Evil dies tonight. Yeah, it's on the very bottom of the shirt. Look, for me, Halloween Kills, it's a brutal continuation of the 2018 movie. I had to sit. There was something about it that kept on gnawing at me after I watched the movie. And it wasn't the kernel of popcorn stuck between my teeth. I was thinking, like, why, what is it about this movie? And look, the movie was supposed to come out like 50 years ago, but it didn't because of the pandemic. So, and it hit me. To me, Scott, I did find this movie to be a very harsh commentary and even very allegorical of our current state of affairs. You had angry, violent mobs who were being pushed by misinformation and fear. Okay. We had the movie also showcased a systemic breakdown. In fact, a character even says, the system broke down. And then you had a savagery going on where that it was never held to account. There was no accountability for what was going on. So, to me, I found it fascinating that this movie was written about a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago at least. And to me, Halloween Kills plays off like it's a movie born out of today's headlines. So, and again, not going into, I'm not going to go into any spoilers, but I will say this: where what you disliked, I actually kind of found to be bold and risky. And I get it. I think a lot of people might be angry because, yes, the movie does something that not many sequels do. And that is, it takes our first Halloween, our 2018 Halloween, focuses on Jamie Lee Curtis's character and the suffering that she's gone through, the PTSD that she's gone through for 40 years, right? So she's the lead, and she was, the final girl at Halloween and Halloween 2, and she was in H2O. But this movie does something different. Now, Jamie Lee Curtis, admittedly, is sidelined due to a good reason. She was critically injured, and she's sidelined in this movie. She spends most of it in a hospital bed. She has like a monologue or two to give, but the story really isn't about Jamie Lee Curtis this time. The story really is about the citizens of Haddonfield and Haddonfield as a town and how this has affected Haddonfield 40 years later, where some people are so young, they probably don't even, they don't remember, or like it was kind of mentioned in Halloween 2018, where they're going, yeah, well, what's the big deal? 5 people were killed. Laurie survived. So, like, what's the big deal? Well, to some of those survivors who were in the movie, Halloween Kills, it is kind of a big deal because they lost friends and or they lost family, and they were memorializing them while saying, hey, we survived that night. So you have that going on. And I think, like, okay, this is different. We're not just telling Laurie's story anymore. We're seeing how violence affects a community. I wrote this in my review as well. Being someone who is close to Boston, because I'm from there, the marathon bomber hurt a lot of people that day, the marathon bombers. And there was a massive hunt for those guys, a massive hunt going on. There was a movie made about it. But they didn't have, say, a David Ortiz, a Haddonfield, that is. They needed the right person to try to galvanize Haddonfield. And Tommy Doyle, as played by Anthony Michael Hall, was not that galvanizing person. I felt that Anthony Michael Hall was probably the weakest link to me. And further to your point, that's the other thing. It's like people, it's just been a theme of Halloween, especially going back to 78. People really aren't paying attention about Michael. They're going after Michael thinking, yeah, I can take him on with bravado and a bat. And that's not the case. It's like, he's going to wipe you out.
What was worse about that for me on this one was the fact that there's an entire scene where they're chasing someone who's not Michael. Yeah. And like the body type is not even remotely like Michael's. So like I'm literally watching this entire scene play out, and I'm kind of like, what is going on here?
But and again, though, it goes to the point of, I'm glad you brought that up, because you had mentioned this to me before I saw the movie. When that all starts, you don't see this person in the car. It's actually a nice little nod to the original Halloween, because a person gets in their car and the inside's all fogged up. We don't get to see this person. They're all in that fog thing, and they drive off in the car, it crashes, and then they escape, and then there's this whole thing at the hospital. But if you think about what's going on at the hospital, right, there's this one man who's like evil dies tonight. And everybody's like, yeah, evil dies tonight. Oh my God, there's Michael. And it's an angry mob being driven by their own fear, but it's being stoked by this misinformation. They're not looking at things clearly. And there are a few people who go, that's not him. You have to stop. And somebody even tries to rescue that person who said, like, you gotta stop. And there's a scene that talks about that after, and that's where that line goes, the system broke down.
Yeah.
And that to me is a problem. Now, there was another interesting thing that I thought the movie did, is because it brings up the question of, is Michael Myers after, like, only after Laurie Strode? Or is he just, or are all the people that he murders, are they just unfortunate? They're his victims truly hapless to circumstance? Because it is brought up in the movie. It's like, he's not coming after you. Like, why do you think he's coming to the hospital? And they piece together some evidence that kind of supports that, which I found very interesting, because up until the 2018 movie, it was believed that Michael had it in, for whatever his reasons, in 1978, had it in for Laurie Strode. But this kind of says, nope, nope, that may not be the case. And I found that to be very interesting. I found it to be a very interesting monkey wrench to throw into the Halloween movies, because what if in fact it's not what and so this has affected her for 40 years, and she just has a feeling that he's going to come for her again. But they do present really good evidence as to why not. So I thought that was really an excellent part of the movie. I don't disagree with you regarding some of the performances. Listen, Judy Greer had to step up. She's more or less the lead in this movie. Let's be honest. So I liked Judy Greer. And I actually liked what the movie had to say. And I really do think that voices of reason were being ignored, and the quiet town of Haddonfield heads down this path of doom and tragedy that it just seems that they can't get out of their way. And when you look at what's happened to this country within the past year, actually what you're seeing worldwide too, with angry mobs, not just protesters, but angry mobs. When you look at what happened on January 6th and how that was born, this is what Halloween Kills reminded me of. So I really think that, yes, Allison Matacek, or is it Matacek? I forget, the one that plays the daughter. I thought that she was fine. Obviously, I think that Jamie Lee Curtis, I think she's going to be in full play for Halloween
for the next
Ends.
one, of course.
And Allison Matacek as a final girl is also going to be in full play. And that's what I really think this movie is really about. I think it's also important. It's more of a continuation to me as it is a sequel. As a standalone, it doesn't really quite work if you had not seen the events that take place in 2018. There is a lot of nostalgia in this movie. There are a lot of Easter eggs in Halloween Kills. They show us some of the original cast from 40 years ago. And to be honest, as a Halloween fan, it was great to see them. Oh, the movie does something else too that's uncommon. It does a couple of flashbacks to further enrich what David Gordon Green and who's the other writer?
Danny McBride.
Danny McBride, that they set up, saying we're retconning all of the sequels. And they do this flashback to further enrich that world. And you actually see a young Hawkins, and you see Dr. Loomis, which for me was kind of cool. It's always nice to see Dr. Loomis back in some action. And I thought the way they handled it was good too. To me, it didn't look like there was any digital chicanery going on. Like they didn't cut and paste Donald Pleasance's face on an actor. I think they actually, I mean, am I wrong? Like, did
No,
you think
right.
that that's what
No,
they
you're
did?
100% right.
Yeah. And the person they picked, I thought was really good. From what I understand, they even had another person do the voice. So there were like two people playing Loomis, and I thought it worked. So look, I think thematically it is very similar to the original Halloween, meaning if we don't pay attention to evil, we're all going to fall victims to it. So with this angry mob and everything, I appreciated it for what it stands for today. Just as PTSD was as important in Halloween 2018, I think that Halloween Kills furthers that, and it's good to see the town of Haddonfield getting some attention.
So real quick, I'll share Yash and Loveline. I'll share my viewpoints. I know Demetri did not get to see Last Duel. I agree. Whoever said in the chat that Jodie Comer is the standout, 100%. I mean, she was
You said
great.
so. Mm-hmm.
She was great in Free Guy. She's great in this movie. That girl, you know, like outside of Killing Eve, I feel like those are the three things everyone kind of talks about when it comes to her. She's going to be here for a very, very long time. She has that star power. You can tell. She just commands the screen. To me, what the problem is with Last Duel is the problem that I have with so many movies nowadays. And I know it's like always this funny conversation, but it's runtime. Last Duel runs 2 hours and like 30 minutes. The first hour of the movie feels like all like kind of like foreshadowing and like set up and build up to something that doesn't really need to be there, because it's basically a film that kind of plays out as three different truths. It's what's Matt Damon's character's truth, what's Adam Driver's character's truth, and then what's Jodie Comer's character's truth. And those three scenes work well, but you have this whole 45 minutes of kind of setup to Matt Damon's character that really doesn't really need to be there at all to make the point that the movie ultimately makes. That also being said, I have a huge issue with the film because of the fact that it tackles a subject as sensitive as rape, and I feel like it makes an audience go through that multiple times. And I don't know if like the people who wrote this movie or are involved with the production have went through this, but from those who have, the last thing they want to see is this repeated multiple times on screen. And there are little nuances and changes in each scene, and I understand what they were trying to do with it, but they didn't have to play the scenes as long as they did. I felt like the Jodie Comer scene was obviously the most important from her perspective. So to kind of show less of it in the Adam Driver story would have been ideal. But there's also this little bit of pandering that happens within the film where Ridley Scott kind of like does like all these characters' truths, like a little like wording comes on the sign on the screen, and it just basically says this person's truth, and then like when it comes to Jodie Comer's character, it goes this person's truth, and then like the truth like kind of like flashes quickly, like there was any doubt in anyone's mind that she wasn't telling the truth at all, because even Adam Driver's story basically pretty much implies that he did something wrong. So I appreciated certain elements of this movie, and I appreciated the fact that it was a medieval Me Too type story, because I feel like it's a different kind of perspective that we haven't seen before. But I feel like it's overly long, and some of the stuff was misguided.
I have yet to see it, but I'll get around to it. It's not streaming, right? That's exclusive to theaters. Yeah, it's exclusive to movie theaters. So, but that was a very good review. You talked about that movie with me earlier in the week, and you basically and very succinctly put out there exactly what you said. So yeah, that's a very
Yeah.
good review.
So I
It'll
mean,
make
I
it
think it's
interesting
worth
for me to
seeing.
watch.
You know, I'm not really sure how much this movie is going to catch on. I mean, it's another one of these movies that the marketing is obviously very misguided. I shouldn't say misguided, misleading, because you basically think you're going into a gladiator type movie, and while there is a gladiator type battle toward the
Mhm.
end of the movie is not about that
Yeah.
at all. And I think when people go into this movie expecting that they're going to see like a gladiator kind of like type movie, they're going to be very, very disappointed when they're seeing this type of stuff go unfold. But
Scott, are
hey,
you saying that the trailers aren't what they seem to be? It's not about men or a man defending a woman's honor?
yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
uh,
Oh, blast them.
yeah,
Blast
Nicole did
them.
write it, but if you look at the movie, and I think this is something that Zach, this is a very good point you made. She did write it, but she was one of three writers, and you can almost tell watching this movie if you want to go back and watch. I don't know if you've seen it. This is one of those few movies that you can literally see three writers and actually see every single act. It's like a three act, and you can tell one was dedicated to one act, one was dedicated to another, and one was dedicated to another. It to me, it's very, very, very apparent like who wrote what. And obviously Nicole had her hand the most in the Jodie Comer storyline, and I think that's why this is the strongest one of the movie.
Bro, you know what? And this is what I love about this show is like having conversations with the people who are watching this
Yeah.
show. So a lot of people don't might not take the time to even write. So thank everybody, Zach, everybody for writing and being a part of the show. We'll talk with you. And this is what I do love the people who tune us in to become part of the conversation. And if you're saying something that relevant and sticks out, we're going to bring you into it. So there you go. Yash thought it was quite brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious to see how the average moviegoer feels about it. You know, I mean, I know everyone who watches the show, you know, not everyone works in the industry, but I know a lot of you guys are big fans. You can consider yourself cinephiles. So, we kind of always have to remember the different tiers of moviegoers. So
Absolutely.
I'm very curious to see how the general public feels about this movie. What about below the average moviegoers? I don't know what it's called. People like my mom who goes see like a movie once every like 6 years, like whenever a Sylvester Stallone movie comes out in theaters. If she hears enough about it, she'll probably see it. I don't know what she's
Yeah.
called.
Yeah. My mom would probably come
Casual
out of that
movie
movie.
watchers.
Oh, my mom's not even a cat. My mom's first question is if I'm talking about a movie, she'll go, "Is it nice?
Yeah,
Is it
it's
nice?"
nice. Yeah.
And so we come out of that and she goes, that wasn't nice. I did not like that movie at all. No, why'd you make me see that movie?"
Yeah, I think about
So,
Ashley's
yeah, no.
grandmother, like, who watches, like, the kind of, like, the Hallmark Christmas movies. I don't know what you call that. Call that audience, that viewership. I mean, where's the tiers? We'll have to come up with our tiers for
Yeah.
movie watchers.
So, and then we should end the show.
We need to end
with,
on Dune. Okay, so I'm so torn about this because I feel like so many people. Is there really any spoilers in Dune? And I mean, are we going to spoil anything if we talk about Dune? Because obviously, if you've seen the David Lynch, this is not new material, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, and the book's been around since what, the 50s, I believe. And listen, there's a reason why there was Jabrowski's Dune, which is a fantastic documentary about a very early production of Dune. And if you paid it, and if you watch that movie, it is not only is it fascinating, but it's because of that pre-production of Dune that the people working on that were the people involved with Alien. It's kind of how we got Alien was because of that Dune. Then we had Dune. Then we had David Lynch's Dune, based off of the Frank Herbert books. Then there was, I think, my favorite adaptation is the Sci-Fi Channel. I think it was in the late 90s, could have been early 2000s. I think it was. They did a mini series. They actually did 2 mini series, but they did a mini series of Dune that I thought was fantastic. And so then there's our buddy Denis Villeneuve, who said, I'm going to tackle this project again. So, yeah, and he did. He did. you want to go? Oh, well, Alan Smithy's Dune is Zach Hunt as Zach. No, he's absolutely right, because there was an extended version of David Lynch's Dune, but David Lynch didn't want that additional footage put in, so he had his name taken off the credits. It was released on DVD. I have it somewhere in a box. It was released on DVD again, I'd say over 10, 15 years ago. They have the theatrical Dune and the extended version of Dune. Sometimes you can catch it on cable. I personally think that the longer version of his Dune, I think it's a little bit better because it flushes some things out. So 1965, David, 1965 is when the first Dune came out. Is that what you're saying? I don't want to misassume, but 1965. So it's 50. It's like 51. No, it's 56 years old.
1965 Dune is when the novel came out. Yes.
Yeah. So you had, all right. So thank you, David, for that assist. Very much appreciate. This is why I love our fans. So no, seriously, I think it's so 1965. You've had this book turned into a trilogy, and there were a lot more after. So no, I think the only thing that we can not talk about is certain changes that they've made. But I think the story itself is, I think people who are into science fiction,
we can actually talk about that. I mean, I think it's important to know, and someone said this yesterday. I was invited to do one of those Twitter spaces yesterday when I came out of the movie, and I kind of said that I didn't love it. And I actually got to talk with my friend Eric and Rachel of Rachel's Reviews, and we did this chat, and it was kind of interesting because there was Eric who absolutely adored this movie, and then it was me and Rachel who were kind of like, eh. And one of the things that I think is very interesting about the film is, and she said this, so this is to her credit. She said, if you are like a purist, if you're a fan of Dune, like if you love that book, if that's your jam, if that's what you want, I think this Dune movie is gonna like knock your freaking socks off. There you go, Zachary. I didn't say the F word. Freaking. It's gonna knock your freaking socks off, because Denis Villeneuve clearly has a love affair with this book. And I mean, to take this movie and make it as long as he did, where he wanted
to
dive and stretch things out, and I know people are really into how much he stretched things out in this. More power to him. I mean, for me, that's where the weakest link of the movie is, along with the lack of character development and story structure, where like from a storytelling perspective, it's very like all over the place. So like if you're not familiar with any of the previous films or any of these novels, God help you trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but again, even if you're a purist, I was more fascinated by characters that they cut out that weren't in this movie, that factor in the book quite prominently, to be quite honest with you. Yeah. And they weren't in this movie. I think, first off, I think it's fair to say, Scott, and I think we're on the same page, visually spectacularly epic. I mean, it is a spectacle to see. And if you are going to see it, and I think you folks who are tuning in right now, I think you're going to, right? I think you kind of want to. I can only suggest and recommend you try to see it on the biggest screen possible. We got to see it in a true IMAX. It looked and sounded tremendous. I mean, it really did. And there were things that I think that had it not been on IMAX, that you will just not pick up on television. I don't care how big, unless your screen is an IMAX screen, even an 80-inch screen is not going to capture everything.
I know. And before we jump off this point, I have to add to that and agree with you, because this is a movie, and this is what I think is another problematic element of this film, is that a movie exists for a very short period of time in a theater.
Yes.
And when I watch Dune in a theater, that immersive quote that everybody is spewing out about this movie, you feel you're immersed in this world. But if you're watching the movie at home, you are not immersed in this world. I can tell you that right now. If I'm watching it on HBO Max or on DVD in like 3 years from now, I'm going to watch it. And if I liked it, I'll probably like enjoy it maybe more watching it and be able to pause and stop and fast forward through things. But you're not having that experience. And I think that's a really big problem, because I think when people watch this in a different type of setting, they're going to lose something.
Oh, 100.
You're going to lose that wow factor.
110%.
It's not there.
No, it's not. And so my flip side to everything that I was just talking about is, listen, if you criticize the David Lynch Dune for its problems, I'll tell you this one suffers from the same exact problems. There's it's hard to put this book and make it translatable to a movie. In fact, I would say that it suffers even more so, because you don't, as Scott said earlier about characters, there are characters that show up, they aren't even explained.
No.
Really, and then they disappear.
Yeah.
There's this one character, Mapes, who's the housemaid for Jessica. Now, in David Lynch's movie, she was played by Linda Hunt. And again, this was a character that kind of factored into the book. In the movie was really the character was, man, it was in the movie for maybe, she was in the movie for maybe 5 minutes tops. And this character, the same character is introduced in this movie differently, more to like how it was in the book. But again, the character's relevance is about 5 minutes, again, not really given justice. For horror, the mentat, we don't even know what mentats are in this movie. So it is very, very, it suffers from the same problems that David Lynch, that the David Lynch movie got criticism for, except I'm going to say David Lynch at least made a complete movie. This movie is not complete. I think it was David who said, so it's part one, so it's just called Duh. yeah, I guess so. But to me, the movie had me for I was fascinated. And again, I think in part, Scott, IMAX. It was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Really
you can't help, because you can tell every frame in this movie was handled with such love and care. So it's kind of funny, because if you go online and read my tweet, like I couldn't even sum it up. Like I literally had to write a series of tweets, because in my first tweet makes it sound like I think this is the best movie on the planet.
That's
because
what I was.
When I look at it from a filmmaking tactical point of view, there's very little to complain about because you can tell that love of everything is there in every single frame, from makeup to sound mixing to sound editing to production design. It's there. It's all there. It feels massive. It feels like someone was just given like a shit ton of money and they said, "Here you go. Make the movie you want to make. Do what you want. Enjoy." And it's there and it's very clear. But the problem ultimately comes from is that, again, you lose all of that when you watch it at home. It's just like another movie. I mean, I'll tell you, it's also like watching Wonder Woman 1984 at home. Like, it was kind of funny because I saw that in a theater, believe it or not, because Warner Brothers invited me to see it in a theater. And I saw it in a theater, and there's certain scenes in that movie, like the opening sequence, that are just like when you watch it on the big screen, you're kind of like, wow, like that's really impressive. You watch it at home, you're kind of like, okay. There's just moments like that. But like Dune's whole selling point is that, like, it's like you're in this world, you feel it.
Yeah.
And when you, to Demetri's point, like, you would think like Jason Momoa is like this huge character in this movie, right? Like from the trailers and from the marketing and the posters, you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to see Jason Momoa in this movie. And he's like in the movie for like 15 minutes.
And that character, Duncan Idaho, again, he was, I forget the brilliant actor that played him in David Lynch, but again, they stretched that character's part out. And I think that was one of the things they stretched a lot out into this movie. I think the last 40 minutes of the movie was just pounding sand, literally. I mean, the narrative, it just fell in on the weight of itself. And there was just no reason for certain scenes to be like, it just extended it. Like, it sets up these two people as having a fight, right? And it's like, okay, fight. No, we've got to do a 10-minute preamble about them prepping for this fight. Like, and I'm not watching Rocky, where you spend a whole movie getting ready. It's like, okay, I get it. They got to fight for whatever reason. And man, oh man, Shevitz, the last 40 minutes, not a whole hell of a lot really happens that's relevant to pushing this movie forward.
Yeah.
I was just amazed. Like, I was like, you could have taken this scene out. You could have taken this scene out. We would have been fine. It really did actually make me appreciate David Lynch's version. And one other thing I did appreciate from David Lynch's version is the Toto soundtrack, as opposed to Hans Zimmer back to being loud. Back to being loud and bombastic. He did such a great job with No Time to Die. And here, woohoo, man, it was, that soundtrack was booming. Dean Stockwell, Dr. Yui, he's in there. The TV spinoff, name that Dune. Gurney Halleck was played in this movie by Brolin.
Josh Brolin. Again, you have all these actors. I mean, this is something that Demetri and I talked about, and I think it's important to note, is that you have all these really well-known actors, or at least maybe not well-known to everyone, but people's faces who you recognize.
Right.
And you see them, and you're kind of like, you get excited, like, oh, he's in this? He's in this. And then he's like, no, he's not. He's in the movie for like 2 minutes. And that's, I think it's like part of a weird marketing grab also, is that they've been putting all these posters and all this emphasis on these characters. And again, those who are not familiar with the source material won't know any better going into it. So they'll be like, Oscar
they're not
in this movie. I love Oscar Isaac.
I love Oscar.
The movie, like, Oscar Isaac's in the movie for 15 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Jason Momoa's in it. Oscar's in this 15 minutes. Okay. Dave Bautista's in it. Oh, 8 minutes. You know, like
this is like the second movie that Dave Bautista has been in where his name's not actually said that I can recall. Maybe his name was said like in passing really quickly. But I was like, wait a minute. I even forget. he's Baron Harkonnen's son, or he's related to him. I forget, Rutha maybe, and then Fade hasn't even come into the story yet. And Fade is a main character. Richard Jordan, not Johnson. Richard Jordan played Duncan Idaho. And then yes, we had Patrick Stewart played Gurney Halleck as listen, the David Lynch Dune, Max von Sydow. You had Jose Ferreira who was in it. You had a very young Virginia Madsen. I forget who played Paul's little sister. Kyle MacLachlan, David Lynch favorite. You had a good cast in David Lynch's Dune as well. This one has a fantastic cast, but again, it suffers from the same problems. For those of you, I don't know if you actually saw it, Lynch's Dune. I was explaining to Scott yesterday, when Universal released Dune back in the early 80s, when you bought your ticket, you were given more or less a legend, a key, a lexicon to say, oh, this is what this means. This is what this planet is. This is what this character and their relation, blah, blah, blah. It was kind of funny. It was a cool collectible, right? But this movie doesn't give you that at all. I just think they do their best, but again, it's so rich. Characters come and go, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, well, there we go. We'll wait until the next one. If this was 2.5 hours long, I'm willing to bet that part 2 is going to be equal, if not more, to that, because there's so much more to happen where they leave off.
Yeah.
So, I just. Yeah, it's another Dune movie.
It's another Dune movie
that really looks. I think we're in agreement too. Cinematography, it's going to be in the running for best. Same thing with visual effects. Yeah. And I really they did use IMAX cameras for a lot of scenes, and it made a difference. I mean, listen, you're going to see it regardless. Try to see it in an IMAX theater if you can. At least get that experience out of the movie. Maybe you'll appreciate the movie more, or maybe you'll have the same problems that we had. I can't wait. Actually, I have to say, the people today who are on, again, thanks a lot. If you go see Dune, please come back next week.
Friday. Yeah, let us know
next Friday, and let us know what you think. David, I appreciate you. You're like our fact checker now. I'm going to make David and Zach like fact checkers. I think it's great to have, because they're really into the conversation and Yash. But please, if you do see it, even write us on YouTube. Because people can comment on the YouTube
they can
channel,
comment
right?
on the video after it's up. Yeah, let us know.
After it's up, let us know what you think. Seriously, we'll bring it up next. Didn't it get a standing O in Venice? Yes, Zach, it did, for about 7 minutes or 15 minutes, depending which article you read.
Yeah.
Doing a 7 minute I had to get the hell out of the theater. I couldn't stand another 7 minutes because I had to go to the bathroom.
I know. I agree.
Like, who's standing 7 minutes after a 2.5 hour movie?
Yeah. I don't know. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. See you next week.
Thanks all. Bye. Thanks, Scott.